All right, we have been through the introduction, and so now it's time to really get started with working with R. This is module 1.1, getting started working with R data objects. Before we really get started, I recommend printing out a copy of one of these R cheat sheets. Again, it's just nice and comforting to have what we're talking about just on a piece of paper next to you, so you just know that you don't have to memorize the syntax, you don't have to memorize the names of functions. There's a lot we're going to go through. We're going to go through stuff really fast, and so it's a good idea just to have one of these cheat sheets printed out so you can really focus on understanding what we're doing rather than thinking about memorizing stuff. So that, again, there's two cheat sheets here. I'd recommend this first one, but this is an older R reference card that can be useful as well. But here's the cheat sheet I recommend, and yeah, print it out, have it next to you. Let's get started. First thing to do, like we went over last time, is just to save this R script. If you're on a PC, you can just right-click and save link as. You'll save it as a .r file, which is an R script, and save it into a convenient folder on your computer. Make sure you know where that folder is, because we're going to do something with that folder right now. So the next step is to open up Rstudio. You should have Rstudio downloaded and installed on your computer at this point. When you open Rstudio, you'll see something that looks like this. Rstudio just makes it life so much easier working with R. It is just one place where all your R development can occur. It has a lot of convenience features versus R's base console, which you could open, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'd recommend starting just with Rstudio. Rstudio should already recognize that you have R installed on your computer. It'll just wrap itself around your R installation and make it much easier to work with. Before we go through the Rstudio interface, I want you to create what's called an Rstudio project. Now, I swear to you, this is going to make life way easier on you, because one of the difficult things in working with R sometimes is making sure R knows where to find data and scripts that you have on your computer. By making an Rstudio project, you're basically setting a folder on your computer as your R Bootcamp folder. That's the first place R is going to look for an R script, and even more importantly, any data that you're going to be working with. We're not going to work with much data in this module, but you'll see this makes life way easier when you are working with data, because if you store those data, that's data files, in the project directory and you're working with an Rstudio project, that's the first place R is going to look for that data. So you don't have to worry about finding the data somewhere and setting a working directory. R will automatically know where to find things. So here's how you do it. Go to the File menu in Rstudio and say New Project. When you do that, you get a window that looks like this. Since you've already made the R Bootcamp folder and you've already stored a script in there, just say Existing Directory and browse to your Bootcamp directory. In my case, it's in my desktop and it's called R Bootcamp. So I'm going to set that folder as my working directory. Once you've found that folder, just go to Create Project, and you've done it. You have now made an Rstudio project, and you have made your life way easier. So for instance, if I wanted to load up the script that for module 1.1 that I just downloaded into this folder, all I have to do is click on this folder icon, which is for opening an R script file, and just navigate right here to module 1_1 in this case, which is the correct script, and there it is. So now, and I would recommend you do that because we're going to be working through this script in this module, and this is what we're going to do for every module. We work through these scripts, and hopefully it'll make sense to you because you can work through it with me, and you can pause the video if you want to go slower, and just make sure you understand what we're doing as we're going through. First of all, let's just take a quick look at the Rstudio interface. We'll be working a lot with Rstudio, so it's really important that we know what we're doing here and we're comfortable in this environment. You'll see 4 quadrants. On the upper left hand corner, we just loaded up a R script, so you'll see your R scripts. We'll do a lot with R scripts. You'll see that in the upper left hand corner. Now in the lower left hand corner, you'll see what's called the R console. This is the heart of R right here in the console. We'll go through that in just a second, but this is really this is basically what R is right here. And for example, I can just plug in some text here, and since that's an R command and R knows what to do with it, if I hit enter, it'll say that 2 + 2 is 4. So it basically, this is where we interface with R's engine. We give R commands, and R returns whatever we tell it to return. That's all. R is what's called a command line language, and we'll do more with that in a second. But let's finish going through the Rstudio interface. And just for the moment, I'm going to hide myself so you can see the rest of the interface here. On the upper right hand corner, what you see is the environment window. This tells us what data objects we have to work with. There are no data objects right now. We'll see what happens when we do add data objects. And finally, we have this navigation panel in the lower right hand corner that gives us a lot of options. This is where we will view plots, any figures that we make. We see any packages. This adds additional functionality to R. So there's lots of options here. There's help files, and so on and so forth. And it also tells us what files we have in our working directory here. So lots of options. And you get more and more familiar with this, but this is Rstudio's base interface. Now, I mentioned before that this Rstudio console in the lower left-hand corner, this is kind of our essential interface with R's engine. All right, this is where we tell R to do things and R does things for us. And R is incredibly powerful and it can do a lot of things for us. And so this console is important to know about. And let's just play around with the console just a little bit just to get comfortable. Again, we can do basic mathematics in this console, so we can add numbers together and get answers, but of course any calculator can do that. That's not why we're using R, but just so you know, R can do this. And just feel free to play around with this. If you want to multiply things, you can use the asterisk symbol and you get your answer. But again, that's not why we're here. We're here to go much farther than simple calculation. So let's make our first R object. All right, let's start really simple. What we can do is just make an object with the name A, and I'm going to assign A the value 2. The way I'm going to do that is use this assignment operator, which looks like an arrow, and give A the value 2. Now you could use an equals sign as well, but it's kind of up to you which one you use, but I would recommend using the assignment operator because the equal sign has other meanings in R, so it just makes it really explicit when you use this assignment operator. Now, nothing happens until you hit enter. When you hit enter, you're telling R to execute a command. Your command is here. A is taking the value 2. I'm assigning this object A the value 2. That's what this is doing. When I hit enter, nothing happens. But actually, did nothing happen? If you look at the global environment, this upper right hand corner, you'll see that actually something did happen. There's this thing A that lives on your global environment. What does it mean to have something live in your global environment? Well, it means that you can access it, you can use it for your own purposes. So just type in A in your console. If you just type in the name of an object, by default, R is going to print out what's in that object. Now you can already see what's in the object in this upper right hand corner, but by default, if you type it into the console and hit enter, you're going to get back what's in that object, and that is just 2, right? So by default, typing out the name of an object, R will print out what's inside it. So that's just the basics of how to create an object. I would recommend that you create your own objects. Objects can be anything. We're going to work with very complex objects later in this bootcamp. Here's another example. So if I wanted to make a variable that stores the name of somebody's actual name, I can do that. I just have to make sure I use quotes to tell R that I'm storing a string of characters. So for example, let's just type the name Batman's Butler, and I'm going to assign it this text string, Alfred Pennyworth. All right, and if I hit enter, now I see that there's a new object in my global environment called Batman's Butler, and it stores this name, Alfred Pennyworth. So if I typed out Batman's Butler, and note that R has a tremendously valuable, this is Rstudio, that is, has a valuable autofill feature, so it knows now that I have some object in my global environment that starts with BATM, and it will autofill, so it'll at least give me this option. I hit enter to complete the autofill, and then hit enter again, and it returns what's in that variable. The variable name is Batman's Butler. What it stores is this text string. What if I didn't use quotes? Oh, here, another useful thing here is that if I go into the console and hit the up arrow, it gives me the previous command. If I hit the up arrow again, it gives me the command before that. So there's a way to kind of easily recover previous commands that you've done within the console. That can be very valuable. What if I didn't use quotes? Well, what R is going to do is it's going to try to find an object that is called Alfred. It's called Alfred or Alfred Pennyworth. That doesn't exist in my global environment. There's no object called Alfred. So it's going to throw an error. It says, I don't know what you're looking for. So you have to use quotes to specify that you're actually referring to a string of characters rather than an object. For instance, if I have an object in my global environment called A, but if I enclose A in quotes, what's it going to return? It's just going to return a text A. If I type in A without quotes, it gives me 2 because A is an object in my global environment and it is storing the value 2. One last thing before we graduate to our scripts is that we can actually use objects in other commands that we give to R. So I could actually add 10 to A because A is a numeric value, it's 2. It'll just give me back the value 12. So that's all I wanted to go over in the console. I don't recommend that you work within the console. It's actually way better to work with our scripts in this upper left-hand corner. So we won't be doing much in the console, but just know that the console is where we're actually interfacing with really what R is, which is just an engine that waits for a command. It takes a command, like, A plus 5, and when you hit enter, it executes the command and it does whatever you say. And where that's all happening, that's in the console. This caret symbol just tells that R is waiting for a command. You give it a command, it'll do something. All right. So that's great to know, but it's way more convenient to work with scripts like this. All right. Let's first, before we work with the module 1.1 script, and this is the only time we'll do this in the bootcamp, but I want you to make your own fresh R script. So instead of loading up an existing script, let's just make a new script. So go to this white paper icon in the upper left-hand corner of the Rstudio interface and just go to the R script where it says R script and make a new R script. So this is how you, if you wanted to start from scratch, you can make a new script. One thing that you'll notice in this R script is that there's a whole bunch of pound signs or hashtags, and there's a reason for that. Those hashtags basically indicate that to R to ignore something. So anything preceded by a hashtag, R will ignore. Let's just quickly go back into the console for 1 second. So if I were to type a hashtag and type a command, R does nothing. The hashtag tells R to ignore entirely. Now, why is that useful? Well, what it does is it gives us an opportunity to give ourselves notes and give other people who are working with our script notes about what we're actually doing. We can use plain English in this case, and we can help organize our scripts and make it human readable. So you'll see this whole section is preceded by pound signs. That means that it tells R to ignore it, but it tells us that this is our Bootcamp Module 1 and it's University of Nevada, and it gives us some notes about this module and what we're doing, getting started, the basics. So that's great. It gives us an opportunity to comment, and basically anything preceded by a pound sign is what's called in computer programming a comment. It's just a human readable way to make our code more accessible, more readable. So generally when you start out a script, you start out a comment, to tell yourself what the script is all about. And so I'll say, this is my first script. All right, and you'll see that RStudio turns anything green that is preceded by a pound sign, just so that it tells you as the code developer that is a comment and it's not going to be interpreted by R. So if you want to, let's write out an actual command. Now an R script is just a sequential set of R commands. Remember, a command is just something that we can type in a console, tell R what to do, and R will execute it. We can write those same commands up in this script. That way we have a permanent record, if we save the script, a permanent record of everything that we did in the correct order. So if we wanted to redo a complex analysis, for instance, we could just rerun a script, and we could go all the way from, say, reading in data to analyzing data and visualizing data to producing figures all in one place. And it's tremendously useful, and we can share our analyses with other people this way. We can share a script and some data, and our analyses are entirely reproducible. So really, scripts are essential to get comfortable with. This is our first script, and let's do something really simple. We've already used A, so let's use B. Let's create a new object named B, and it has the value 10. And you'll see that just typing it in doesn't do anything. It hasn't moved over to our global environment. Nothing's happened. To actually run a command from the script window, even hitting enter won't do anything. That works in the console. To run a line of the script, use Control or Command Enter in RStudio, and that will actually run every line, or would run that's a way to run a particular line of a script. And now you see that B is now in the global environment, and we can use B. So if we wanted to add B plus A, we can do that. So just hit Control Enter, and now B plus A is equal to, well, I changed the value of a from 2. Your value of a is probably 2. So let's I can redo that. Go make a the value 2. I'll control enter that. And now b plus a would be 12. All right. I don't want to confuse you. All right. When you do make a new script, always save it. Even though this script is not actually one that we care about, let's just save it. You can do Control S. That's an easy way to do it. Or you go to the File menu, Save As, and it'll automatically save in your project directory. And I can just save this as test script, or whatever you'd like to save it as. And I recommend that you take a little time now and just play around with the script. Make sure you know how to write lines in a script, how to use comments. You can actually put comments on the very same line as you have an actual command. Add objects B and A here, and it'll still run. So anything preceded by a pound sign won't be interpreted, but anything before that pound sign will be interpreted. All right. And the final thing I'll show you is that if you wanted to run the whole script, you can just highlight the whole script and run it, or you could highlight the whole script and Control or Command Enter, and it'll run the whole script. So play around with the script on your own. Make sure you understand the basics of working with R scripts, and make sure that you always save your scripts because you don't want to lose anything. And we'll come back, and when we come back in the next video, we will work with the existing script, module 1.1, and let's start working through